Morning, students. From today, I will take the topic lacrimal apparatus. The next coming 3 classes, I am going to deal with this topic. So, contents of this topic is anatomy, tear filling, watering of eye, dry eye, and diagnosis studies. Today, I will try to cover anatomy and tear filling. So, what is lacrimal apparatus? Lacrimal apparatus, it is a set of tissues which concerned with the tear formation and transport. This is the set of tissues which concerned with the tear formation and transport of the tears. So it starts with the lacrimal gland, which produces the major content of the tear film, tears, and then it goes to conjunctival sac. Conjunctival sac is nothing but a potential space enclosed by the conjunctiva, and then it goes to a small orifice called lacrimal puncta. Then it goes to lacrimal sacs, then it goes to lacrimal canaliculi, then it goes to lacrimal sac, and finally to the nasolacrimal duct. So these are the glands and various structures of the lacrimal apparatus which are concerned with the formation of the tears and the transport of the tears. So this is a picture where you can see different parts of the lacrimal apparatus. Here we have a lacrimal gland from where the tears enters into the conjunctival sac. Then here is a small punctae called punctae present, upper punctae and lower punctum. Then these are the canaliculi. Then lacrimal sac. Then finally into the nasolacrimal duct. So in the lacrimal apparatus, these are the 6 structures has the role in formation of the lacrimal apparatus. So we start with the lacrimal gland. This lacrimal gland is a exocrine gland located in the superior and lateral quadrant of the orbit. So in this picture you can see this part. This is the lacrimal gland, which is situated at the superior and lateral quadrant of the orbit. It consists of 2 parts: large orbital part. This is the large orbital part, and small palpebral part. Small one which is present below the orbital part, we call it as a palpebral part. So these 2 are separated by a muscle called levator palpebrae superioris. The lateral expansion of this muscle separates the lacrimal gland in 2 parts, that is large orbital part and small palpebral part. So in this picture you can see this is the muscle. Here it is the lateral expansion of the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. This muscle separates the lacrimal. This is the pink one is the lacrimal gland, which separates the lacrimal gland into superior orbital part and inferior palpebral part. Hello. Bag it. So this lateral expansion of the levator superioris muscle separates the lacrimal gland into superior orbital part and inferior palpebral part. So basically, the lacrimal gland is of almond shape. That is the shape of the almond, and it is situated in a fossa called fossa for lacrimal gland at the orbital plate of the frontal bone. In the orbital plate of the frontal bone, there is a fossa called fossa for lacrimal gland, in which the lacrimal gland is situated. It has 2 surfaces, that is superior and inferior surfaces, and 2 border, that is anterior and posterior border, and 2 extremities, that is medial and lateral extremity. Superior surface, it is a convex and lies in contact with the orbital roof. The superior surface is a convex in structure, convex in shape, and it is in contact with the roof of the orbit. And whereas the inferior surface is concave and lies on the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. So here, this is the inferior surface which is concave and lies on the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. And it has 2 borders, anterior border and posterior border. Anterior border is limited by a orbital septum, and posterior border is related with the orbital pad of fat. It has 2 extremities, lateral extremity and medial extremity. The lateral extremity rests on lateral rectus muscle. Lateral extremity rests on this is the lateral rectus muscle. The lateral extremity rests on lateral rectus muscle, and medial extremity rests on levator palpebrae superioris muscle. This is the medial extremity which rests on levator palpebrae superioris muscle. So 2 extremities, that is lateral and medial. The lateral extremity rests on lateral rectus, and medial extremity rests on levator palpebrae superioris muscle. So basically the lacrimal gland has two surfaces, that is superior and inferior surface, two borders, anterior and posterior border, and two extremities, lateral and medial extremities. So this is about orbital part of the lacrimal gland. Coming to the palpebral part, it is a smaller in size when compared to the orbital part. It is around 1/3 of the size of the orbital part and situated along the course of ducts of orbital part. So here, this is the orbital part from which the ducts of the orbital part travels to the palpebral part, and this palpebral part is present along the course of ducts of orbital part. Here, these three structures you can see now that these are the ducts. This palpebral part present on the course of orbital part. So it is of the size of 1/3 of the size of the orbital part, situated along the course of ducts of orbital part. It superiorly is related to the levator palpebral superior muscle and inferior to the superior fornix. So in this picture you can see this is the palpebral part. Superiorly it is covered by levator palpebral superior muscle. Inferiorly it is opens into the superior fornices of the conjunctiva. Fornices are nothing but the folds of conjunctiva. This is about palpebral part of lacrimal gland. Coming to the ducts, the lacrimal ducts, they are around 10 to 12 in number, and the ducts arise from the orbital part, pass through the palpebral part, and opens into the superior fornix of the conjunctiva. So there are some additional ducts from palpebral part which open directly into the conjunctiva. Mainly the ducts from the lacrimal gland opens into the lateral part of the superior fornix of the conjunctiva. There are some few ducts which may open directly into the conjunctiva. So as the ducts travel along the course of palpebral part, removal or damage to the palpebral part of the gland will stop secretions reaching the fornix. So what happens as you see now these ducts travel along the course of palpebral part. So if you want to take the biopsy of the lacrimal gland, if you remove this palpebral part, these ducts will also get damaged, so that the secretions from the orbital part of the lacrimal gland will not reach the superior fornix. So if you want to take the biopsy, you should take biopsy from the orbital part of the lacrimal gland. You should not take the biopsy from the palpebral part of the lacrimal gland. You should take from the orbital part of the lacrimal gland, so that we do not damage the ducts of the lacrimal gland. So this is the applied anatomy. If you want to take the biopsy from the lacrimal gland, you have to take it from the orbital part, so that we will not damage the ducts of the lacrimal gland. So biopsy of gland always should be done in orbital part of the lacrimal gland. Coming to the microscopic structure of the lacrimal gland, basically it is a lobulated tubulo-acinar gland. It looks like this. And microscopically it has glandular tissue, stroma, and septate. This glandular tissue consists of acini. These are the acini, which are arranged in the form of lobules. And the ducts from the acini, the ductules arises, and from the ductules the ducts are formed. These lobes and lobules are separated by a septa, and these acini are nothing but pyramidal shaped cells. They help in secreting the tears from the lacrimal gland. From these acini, they secrete the tears, and these tears are expelled by the help of specialized cells called myoepithelial cells. These myoepithelial cells contract, and they help in extracting the tears which are secreted from the acini into the conjunctival sac. So by the contraction of the myoepithelial cells, the tears which are formed will extracted out into the conjunctival sac. So this is a microscopic picture of the lacrimal gland, which mainly consists of glandular tissue, stroma, and septae. The glandular tissue consists of acini and ducts and ductules. These acini are covered by myoepithelial cells. By the contraction of the myoepithelial cells, whatever the tears secreted from the acinous cells will extract out into the conjunctival sac through the ducts of the lacrimal gland. So this is the other picture. This is the position where the acini cells are present, which are covered by myoepithelial cells. These ductules, from these ductules forms, and all the ductules converge and form a duct. From the whatever the tears secreted from the acinus, by the contraction of the myoepithelial cells, they enter into the enter through the ducts into the conjunctival sac. Coming to the blood supply of the lacrimal gland, it is mainly supplied by the lacrimal artery, which is a branch of ophthalmic artery, which in turn is a branch of internal carotid artery. And the main venous supply is by lacrimal vein, which drains into the superior ophthalmic vein and finally into the angular vein. The lymphatic drainage is by preauricular lymph nodes. This is about the blood supply and lymphatic supply of the lacrimal gland. So coming to the nerve supply, the lacrimal gland, the parasympathetic secretomotor fibers is from the superior salivary nucleus, which is present in the brainstem, and sympathetic nerve supply is from the carotid plexus of the cervical sympathetics, and sensory supply is from the afferent fibers is from the lacrimal nerve, which is a branch of ophthalmic division of fifth cranial nerve. This is about parasympathetic, sympathetic, and sensory supply of the lacrimal gland. So this is about lacrimal gland, which is a main lacrimal gland, where there are two other axillary lacrimal glands are present, which we call them as glands of Wolframs and glands of Proce. These are axillary glands, axillary lacrimal glands, which has the same function as the lacrimal gland, but these are very small in size and they secrete very lesser amount of tears. These we call it as a axillary glands. There are two in number. First one is glands of Wolframs and glands of Proce. These are small, compound, and branch tubular glands. These glands of Wolframs are located in the middle of this is the eyelid. Here you can see the star mark. This is the green color is there, no? This is the glands of Wolframs. These are small, compound, tubular glands. These glands of Wolframs, this is the eyelid. Here we see the eyelashes, no? This is the eyelid structure. And in the middle of the eyelids, we have the glands of Wolframs. This is one of the axillary lacrimal gland. And the other one is glands of Proce. These glands of Proce are present at the fornices. This is a fold of conjunctiva. Fornices are nothing but the fold. These conjunctiva arises from the eyelids into that is a palpebral conjunctiva. This is the bulbar conjunctiva. There is a fold of this there is a fold in between the palpebral and bulbar conjunctiva. That fold we call it as a fornices. These glands of Proce are present at the level of fornices. So the glands of Proce are present at the fornices, whereas glands of Wolframs are present at the middle of the eyelid. These glands of Wolframs are around 2 to 5 in number, whereas the glands of Proce are 42 number in upper fornix and 6 to 8 in number in lower fornix. So compared to the glands of Wolframs, the number of Proce glands are more. So this is about the axillary lacrimal glands. There are 2 in number, glands of Wolframs and glands of Proce. So this is at the middle of the eyelid, we have the glands of Wolframs, and at the fornices we have the glands of Proce. So we have 3 glands, that is main lacrimal gland, which has 2 parts, orbital part and palpebral part, and there is other 2 axillary lacrimal glands that we call it as the glands of Wolframs and glands of Proce. So after lacrimal gland, I'm going to talk about lacrimal passages. Here we have the superolateral part of this is the eyeball. This is the superolateral part of the eye orbit. Here we have a main lacrimal gland. From here, there is a major content of the tears are produced from the lacrimal gland. These lacrimal glands, which produce tears, these tears with the help of myoepithelial cells, they are extracted out into the conjunctival sac. So from the lacrimal gland, the tears enter into the conjunctival sac. The conjunctival sac is nothing but the potential space which is enclosed by the conjunctiva. These conjunctiva stretches from the lid margin to the limbus. Limbus is nothing but the junction of the cornea and the sclera. We call it as a limbus. So the conjunctival sac is nothing but the potential space which is enclosed by the conjunctiva, which stretches from the lid margin to the limbus. So from the lid margin to the limbus, we have a conjunctiva. This conjunctiva encloses a space called conjunctival sac. This sac opens at the palpebral fissure. Palpebral fissure is nothing but the gap between the upper and lower lid margin. So when we close the eyelids, the sac is approximated. So when we open the eyelids, the sac is opened. So sac is closed only when the lids are approximated. So you understand, no, the conjunctiva sac nothing but the potential space which is enclosed by the conjunctiva, which extends the conjunctiva which extends from the rim of the from the lid margin to the limbus. So whatever the tears which are produced from the lacrimal gland first enters into the conjunctival sac. From the conjunctival sac, this is the eyeball. This is the from here we have a lacrimal gland. From here the tears are produced. They enter into the conjunctival sac and these whatever the tears which are produced, which are secreted from lacrimal gland, is collected at the level of medial canthus. Here we have a small round small opening. This we call it as a punctum. If you can see clearly, there is a small opening is there at the junction of the ciliated and non-ciliated part of the eyelid. Ciliated is nothing but where the eyelashes are present. Here we don't, at the medial end of the eyelid, we don't have the eyelashes. At the junction of this ciliated and non-ciliated part, we have a small opening called puncti. This is the small opening. Here, this is lower puncti. In the same way, in the upper lid also, we have a small opening called upper puncti. So, after conjunctival sac, the tears enters into the lacrimal punctum. These are nothing but the small round or oval shaped orifices. On the here these orifices are present in a small elevation which is present at the junction of ciliated and non-ciliated part that we call it as a lacrima papillae. So papilla lacrimalis, there is a small elevation which is present at this part. In this elevation, we have a small opening that we call it as a punctum. So there are two in number, upper punctum and lower punctum. They are present at the middle end of the lid margin at the junction of its ciliated and non-ciliated parts. The upper punctum and lower punctum are at a distance of, the upper punctum is around 6 mm from the middle end of the middle corner of the eyelids. This is around 6 mm the upper punctum is around 6 mm and lower punctum is around 6.5 mm from the middle end of the eyelid. So the upper punctum and lower punctum are at a distance of 6 mm and 6.5 mm from the medial canthus. This is the medial canthus. This is the medial canthus. From here, the lower punctum is around 6.5 mm and the upper punctum is around 6 mm. The upper punctum opens infraposteriorly and lower punctum opens superior-posteriorly. So, from lacrimal gland, the tears enters into the conjunctival sac. From the conjunctival sac, they enter into the lower puncti, upper and lower puncti. Then from the puncti, the tears from the which enter into the puncti, then enter into the lacrimal canaliculi. These lacrimal canaliculi are also in 2 in number. These joints, these lacrimal canaliculi are nothing but the tube-like structures. This is the lacrimal canaliculi. Here we have a punctum. This is the lower punctum and this is the upper punctum. These tube-like structures are there, no? These are the upper canaliculi and lower canaliculi. These connects the puncti to the lacrimal sac. This is the lacrimal sac. This expanded portion is there, no? This is the lacrimal sac. These two canaliculi joins and forms as a common canaliculi. This is upper canaliculi and lower canaliculi. These two unite and form a common canaliculus. This is the common canaliculus. These common canaliculus connects the punctum to the lacrimal sac. So the lacrimal canaliculi are 2 in number, joins punctum to the lacrimal sac. The two parts, first part is vertical and then second part is horizontal. It has this in this picture you can see clearly. It has 2 parts. This is the canaliculi. Here we have a punctum, upper punctum, lower punctum. Here this is the canaliculi. It has 2 parts. If you observe clearly, there is 2 parts of it. This is the vertical part which is around 2 mm and this is the horizontal part. These are at the right angles to each other. These 2 parts are right angles to each other. The vertical part is around 2 mm and horizontal part is around 8 mm. So it has 2 parts. The vertical part is around 2 mm, turns medially at right angle to become horizontal part, which is around 8 mm. These horizontal part converge into the inner canthus to open into the sac. So these 2 canaliculi may open separately or may join to form a common canaliculus. The upper canaliculi may directly join into the lacrimal sac, or these upper and lower canaliculi may join and form a common canaliculus and they connect the punctum to the lacrimal sac. So sometimes the common canaliculus may be absent because these 2 canaliculi directly connect to the lacrimal sac. If they connect, they form a common canalicus which connects the lacrimal sac into the punctum. So here at this junction of the common canalicus, we have a specialized mucus folds which forms a valve-like structure called valve of Rosenmuller. Here we have a valve of Rosenmuller. In this picture, you can see this. Here it's a position where we see a valve of Rosenmuller. This is formed by a specialized mucosal folds which is present at the common canalicus. The main function of this valve of Rosenmuller is it prevents the backflow of tears from the lacrimal sac into the eye. So because of this presence of this valve, there is a prevention of backflow of tears from the lacrimal sac into the eyeball. So there is only one way of flow of tears in the eye. If there is no valve, there is a backflow of tears which is present in the lacrimal sac enter into the conjunctival sac. So by this valve, it prevents the backflow of tears into the conjunctival sac. So this is about the valve of Rosenmuller. This fold of mucosa at the position of common canalicus forms a valve called valve of Rosenmuller, which prevents the reflex of tears back into the conjunctival sac. So you have to remember this valve of Rosenmuller, which is present at the common canalicus, which is nothing but the fold of mucosa, which prevents the reflex of the tears into the conjunctival sac. Next, first from the lacrimal gland, conjunctival sac, then punctate, then canalicus, upper canaliculi, lower canaliculi, which unites to form common canalicus. And from the common canalicus, the next structure is lacrimal sac. This is the lacrimal sac. This is nothing but the upper expanded portion of the nasolacrimal duct. This lacrimal sac is followed by the nasolacrimal duct. This lacrimal sac is nothing but the upper expanded portion of the nasolacrimal duct. It lies in a fossa called lacrimal fossa. Here you don't confuse with the fossa of lacrimal gland, where the lacrimal gland is positioned. Whereas in case of lacrimal fossa, the lacrimal sac is present. Don't confuse with the lacrimal fossa and fossa of lacrimal gland. This lacrimal sac lies in the lacrimal fossa, located in the anterior part of the medial orbital wall. Here it is located. It is located at the anterior part of the medial orbital wall. It is enclosed by lacrimal fascia, which is formed by periorbita. Between the sac and fascia, there lies a alveolar tissue and venous plexus. This lacrimal sac has three parts. In this picture, you can see this is the lacrimal sac. It has three parts. The portion which is present above the common canaliculi, we call it as a fundus. Here we have a common canalicus. This is the portion which is present above the common canalicus, we call it as a fundus. And the middle part, we call it as a body. And the bottom one, we call it as a neck. So it has three parts: fundus, body, and neck. Coming to the relations of the lacrimal sac, anteriorly it is related to the medial palpebral ligament, posteriorly to the posterior lacrimal tusk and orbicus oculi muscle, and medially to middle meatus and ethmoidal sinus, and laterally to the skin, fascia, and auricularis oculi muscle. These relations you have to remember. And we have a angular vein and angular artery which crosses the medial palpebral ligament about 8 mm from the medial canthus. This is the medial canthus. Here we have at this position, at the distance of 8 mm from the medial canthus, we have an angular vein and angular artery. So while doing lacrimal sac surgery, the incision, and sometimes there is a tributary which is present, which comes nearer up to the 3 mm from the medial canthus. This angular vein normally and the angular artery which are normally present positioned at the 8 mm from the medial canthus, but sometimes there is a tributary which runs from this angular vein and arteries which come closer to the 3 mm from the medial canthus. So while doing the lacrimal sac surgery, in order to prevent profuse bleeding due to rupture of this angular vein, we have to give the incision within 3 mm from the medial canthus. So while doing lacrimal sac surgery, we have to give the incision within 3 mm from the medial canthus in order to prevent the rupture of the angular vein. The incision should be given 3 mm from the medial canthus. So we should not take the risk. Normally it is positioned at 8 mm, but sometimes there is a tributary which come closer about 3 mm from the medial canthus. So in order to prevent the damage to the tributary and for the prevention of profuse bleeding during sac surgery, the incision should be made within 3 mm from the medial canthus. The skin incision, whatever we give, that should be given within 3 mm from the medial canthus. This is the applied anatomy you have to remember. So here we have an angular vein. Normally, here we have at this position we have a medial canthus. Normally it is positioned at 8 mm from the medial canthus, but sometimes there is a chance of tributaries which come closer at the level of 3 mm from the medial canthus. So in order to prevent the damage to the, in order to prevent the rupture of the angular vein, whatever the skin incision we give in SAG surgeries, it should be given within 3 mm from the medial canthus. So this is the medial canthus. So if you want to give the incision should be within 3 mm from the medial canthus. So this lacrimal sac is followed by nasolacrimal duct, which extends from the lacrimal sac into the inferior meatus. It extends here from the neck of the lacrimal sac. It extends from the neck of the lacrimal sac into the inferior meatus. It is around 18 mm in length and 3 mm in diameter. The upper end is the narrowest one. It runs runs downwards, backwards, and laterally. In this position, you can see this. It runs downwards, backwards, and laterally, and is lined by 2 layers of columnar epithelium. It has 2 parts: intraosseous part, intramural part. Intraosseous part is present between the bones, and intramural is present between the mucosal membranes of the nose. It has 2 parts: intraosseous part and intramural part. Here also at the bottom of the nasolacrimal, we have a specialized valve called valve of Husner. I already discussed about valve of Rosenmüller, which is nothing but the mucosal folds which are present at the common canalicus, which prevents the backflow or reflux of tears into the conjunctival sac. Whereas this valve of Husner, this is also nothing but a fold of mucous membrane, which prevents the sudden blast of air from entering into the lacrimal sac. So whenever when we blow the nose, whatever the air which is blown will not enter into the eyes because of the presence of this valve of Husner. So this valve of Husner prevents the blast of air from entering into the lacrimal sac. Whereas this valve of Rosenmüller prevents the reflux of tears into the conjunctival sac. These 2 valves you have to remember, that is valve of Rosenmüller and valve of Husner. Valve of Husner is present at the bottom narrowest part of the nasolacrimal duct, whereas valve of Rosenmüller is present at the common canalicus. So this is about lacrimal passages. So we start with the lacrimal, from the lacrimal gland to the conjunctival sac, then 2 puncti, that is upper punctum and lower punctum, then followed by the superior canalicus and inferior canalicus, which unite to form common canalicus. This common canalicus unites lacrimal sac into the punctum. From the lacrimal sac is nothing but the upper expansion of the nasolacrimal duct. So lacrimal sac is followed by the nasolacrimal duct, which opens at the inferior meatus. In this picture, you can see this is the position where there is a valve of Husner, which prevents the backflow of air into the lacrimal sac. And at this position, we have a valve of Rosenmüller, which prevents the backflow of water into the conjunctival sac. Coming to the blood supply of the lacrimal passages, the arterial supply is from the superior and inferior palpebral arteries, which are the branches of ophthalmic artery, and it is also supplied by the angular artery and infraorbital artery and nasal branches of sphenopalatine artery. And venous drainage is by angular vein, infraorbital vein, and nasal vein. Lymphatic drainage is by submandibular group and deep cervical group. And nerve supply is by infratrochlear nerve and anterior superior alveolar nerve. So this is about blood supply, lymphatic supply, and nerve supply of the lacrimal passages. So this is about basic anatomy of the lacrimal apparatus. So what are the structures we see in lacrimal apparatus? So it starts with the lacrimal gland, then conjunctival sac, then lacrimal punctum, then lacrimal canalicule. They are 2 in number. The lacrimal punctum 2 in number. Then it enters the lacrimal sac and finally into the nasolacrimal duct, which opens into the inferior meatus. So these lacrimal passages you have to remember. So what are the other 2 axillary glands along with the lacrimal gland we see? That is the glands of Roche, which are present at the superior, which are present at the conus of the conjunctiva, and glands of Wolframs, which are present at the middle of the eyelid. So these are the other glands which helps in secreting the tears, major content of the tears. So this angular vein you have to remember. So whenever you do the lacrimal sac surgery, the incision should be made within 3 mm from the medial canthus in order to prevent the rupture of the angular vein. And these two valves you have to remember, valve of Rosenmuller and valve of Hössner. So coming to the tear film, what is tear film? It is a fluid which is covering the cornea. Covering the cornea. The eyeball surface is covered by a thin watery film that we call it as a tear film. This fluid covering the cornea, we also call it as a precorneal film. This tear film consists of 3 layers. From posterior to the anterior, it has 3 layers. Posteriorly, it starts with the mucus layer. This picture you can see, this is the epithelium of the cornea. This epithelium of the cornea is covered by, basically it is covered by tear film. In the tear film, it has 3 layers. The first, from the posteriorly, it has mucus layer. It starts with the mucus layer, then aqueous layer, then lipid layer. So the tear film consists of 3 layers. From posterior to the anterior, from posterior it starts with the mucus layer, which is present over the epithelium of the cornea. Then the mucus layer, and coming to the anteriorly, we have aqueous layer and the lipid layer. So what is the role of the tear film? This tear film, there is various functions are there for the tear film. First one is it protects the cornea from drying. So with the help of this tear film, the eyeball is maintained in the moist state, and this prevents the drying of the cornea. So first one is it prevents the drying of the cornea. And the second one is because of the smoothness of the cornea, this tear film helps in maintaining the smoothness and of the cornea, so that it helps in maintaining the refractive power of the cornea. There are 2 refractive surfaces in the eyeball, that is cornea and lens. So if there is a drying and desiccation of the cornea, what happens? The refractive status of the eyeball changes. Because of the drying, there is a decreased vision. So that with the help of this precorneal tear film, as it maintains the cornea eyeball in a moist state and prevents it from drying, it maintains the refractive power of the cornea. And there are certain immunoglobulins which are present in the tear film, which also helps in preventing the infection, bacterial and microbial infections. And because of as it is exposed, this tear film is exposed to the outside atmosphere. Here there is amount of small oxygen. There is a small amount of oxygen in the tear film, which by the help of this tear film, the oxygen enters into the corneal epithelium and supply some oxygen to the corneal tissue. So it also provides oxygen to the corneal tissue. It also prevent against various infections, and as it also support the dehydrated state of the cornea, because the cornea should be in a dehydrated state. If there is an accumulation of fluid in the cornea, that leads to corneal edema. Thereby, there is a decrease because of the fluid in the cornea, there is a decreased vision in the patient. So, in order to maintain the cornea in dehydrated state, this tear film helps because the tear film is a hyperosmolarity. Because of the hyperosmolarity of the tear film, whatever the fluid which is present in the corneal tissue will enter into the tear film from the cornea. If it is hypoosmolar, whatever the concentrated solutes which are present in the tear film will enter into the cornea, but it will not be like that, because the tear film is a hyperosmolar, so that whatever the fluid which is present in the cornea will enter into the tear film, and this helps in maintaining the dehydrated state of the cornea. So these are the functions of the tear film. So this tear secretion, it has, I already said, it has 3 layers: mucus layer, aqueous layer, and lipid layer. The lacrimal gland, which secretes the watery part of the tear film, that is the aqueous layer, is mainly secreted by the lacrimal gland. This middle one is the water layer is there. This major bulk of the tear film, that is aqueous layer, is secreted from the lacrimal gland. And this oily layer or lipid layer, the pink one, this oily layer or lipid layer is secreted from the meibomian glands. Meibomian glands are the modified sebaceous glands which are present in the eyelids. These glands secrete the lipid layer of the tear film. The main function of this lipid layer is, as it is a thick layer, it prevents the evaporation of the water layer. And this mucus layer, which is present posteriorly just above the corneal epithelium. It is secreted from the goblet cells of the conjunctiva. These goblet cells of the conjunctiva produces mucin, which allows the wetting of the ocular surface and also helps in stabilizing the tear film. So main function of this watery layer is which is secreted from the lacrimal gland. It has some immunoglobulins. The immunoglobulins which has anti-infective properties which are present in the watery layer. And mucus layer, it helps in stabilizing the tear film by converting the hydrophobic cornea into hydrophilic cornea. And this lipid layer will helps in preventing the evaporation of the watery layer of the tear film. So coming to the individual layers, the mucin layer, which is around 1 micron thickness, which is secreted from the goblet cells of the conjunctiva. Mucin is mainly composed of acidic glycoproteins, which are mainly secreted from the goblet cells, which are present in the conjunctiva, and secondarily by some stressed epithelial cells. This mucin allows tears to adhere to the microvilli. Normally the cornea is hydrophobic. The corneal tissue is hydrophobic. Because of this presence of this mucus layer, this converts the hydrophobic nature of the cornea into the hydrophilic in nature, thereby helps in attaching that watery tear film onto the cornea and helps in maintaining the stable tear film. So this mucin layer is important for the stabilizing the tear film. So this mucin layer is secreted from the goblet cells. These are the goblet cells which are present in this is the conjunctival epithelium. This brown color one is a goblet cells, which are present which are located in the conjunctival epithelium. These synthesize and secrete the mucin. This mucin provides lubrication for the smooth movement of the eyelids across the ocular surface, and this smooth movement is important for the good vision. And when in case of Sjogren's syndrome, there is a decrease in the mucin production. So basically, this mucin layer converts the hydrophobic cornea into the hydrophilic cornea. There is a small microvilli present at the corneal epithelium. When this mucin is attached to the corneal epithelium, they converts the hydrophobic nature of the cornea into the hydrophilic nature. So that by converting into the hydrophilic nature, this helps in preventing the breakdown of the tear film, and also it helps in maintaining the stable state of the tear film. So mucin layer is very important for the stabilized tear film. This main property is because of the conversion of the hydrophobic nature of the cornea into the hydrophilic nature. So next one is after from posterior to the anterior, the mucin layer is above the mucin layer. We have an aqueous layer. It is around 7 microns in thickness. This is the largest. This forms the main bulk of the tear film. This is around 7 microns in thickness, and this aqueous layer is secreted from the lacrimal gland. Whereas mucus layer is secreted from the goblet cells of the conjunctiva, whereas this aqueous layer is secreted from the lacrimal gland, and it consists of water, electrolytes, proteins, and immunoglobulin A and growth factors. Because of the presence of immunoglobulins, this layer has the antimicrobial activity and it helps in preventing the infections. And it also supplies oxygen to the cornea. And as it forms the main bulk of the tear film, it also helps in washing away the waste debris from the eyeball. So these are the functions of the aqueous layer. This aqueous layer is secreted from the lacrimal gland. It has some immunoglobulin present in it, so it has some anti-infective properties. And coming to lipid layer, which is a very thin, it is around 0.1 to 0.2 micrometers in thickness. It is secreted from the meibobin gland, which are present in the eyelids. And these lipids are formed by a process called esterification. And this lipid formation is regulation and the protection is by presence of androgens in the body. So normally, whatever the meibobin gland secrete, these secretions are only melt at the temperature of 35 degrees centigrade. So that this layer helps in retarding the evaporation of the aqueous layer. So by this, this layer covers the aqueous layer, and they have as these lipids are very much dense in nature, they helps in preventing the evaporation of the watery aqueous layer. Only if there is a temperature is more than 35 degrees centigrade, only there is an evaporation of the tear film. So this is about the 3 layers of the tear film. This tear film may come as a 2 marks question. If it come as a 2 marks question, you have to write about all these 3 layers and they have to write about the from where they are secreted, where they are produced. For suppose if there is a lipid layer which is produced from the meibomian gland, and aqueous layer is from the lacrimal gland, and mucus layer is from the goblet cells of the conjunctiva. And we have to write about the functions of the tear film. So this is a tear film. This is the bottom one is the corneal surface. Here we have epithelium. In the epithelium we have a microvilli or glycocalyx. These anchors the mucus layer, and above the mucus layer we have aqueous layer, and finally we have a lipid layer. So this is the lacrimal gland. So this is about the composition of the tear film. So the main function of this mucus layer is maintaining the stability of the tear film. The main function of the aqueous layer is anti-infective property. It forms the main bulk of the tear film. And lipid layer is main property is to prevent the evaporation of the tear film. So this is about the tear film. So with this I will stop today's session. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in this topic. Basic anatomy and tear film. Girish. Close in the topic. Share it, close in the sharing cloud side. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. About second internals, sir said we will discuss with the other departments like community medicine and ENT, and we will announce the date shortly. Within 1 week, we'll announce the date. So in the next class, I will teach about watering of the eye and teach about watering of the eye and dry eye. I will take watering of the eye and dry eye. So in this class, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Okay. No doubts. So I'm concluding. So we will meet you in the next class. Thank you.